With slogans and social media posts, former President Donald Trump has hinted at ideas that could significantly alter how taxes are collected in the U.S. Earlier this summer, when Trump visited Republicans on Capitol Hill, he hinted at a radical shift in the tax system. Instead of taxing Americans on income from jobs and investments, Trump proposed imposing a broad tax on goods imported from abroad. In his vision, such tariffs could replace income taxes as the primary source of federal revenue. Initially discussed behind closed doors, the idea seemed to lose momentum, as experts questioned its feasibility and Trump did not publicly revisit it. However, in recent weeks, Trump has floated various tax ideas that, collectively, would drastically reshape the U.S. tax system. His ideas would reduce the reliance on income taxes and introduce expansive tariffs to raise federal revenue. Some of his proposals, such as eliminating taxes on tips and overtime, could create significant loopholes in the tax system, encouraging Americans to adjust how they earn money to avoid taxes. He has also suggested ending taxes on Social Security benefits and fully restoring the state and local tax deduction, while pushing to extend tax cuts from 2017 that are set to expire next year. Erica York, an analyst at the Tax Foundation, which typically supports lower taxes, said, "The joke is maybe over the next 2 weeks, he'll eliminate the income tax altogether with all his proposals." She notes that these smaller policies, aimed at specific industries or types of income, are gradually moving in that direction. If Trump's ideas were all implemented, they would shift the U.S. closer to the tax systems of other advanced economies like Canada, Germany, and Japan, which rely on value-added taxes, essentially national sales taxes on goods and services. The U.S. is one of the few countries without such a tax, and many economists support consumption taxes as a more efficient and harder-to-evade way to raise government revenue. However, several economists criticize Trump's proposals, arguing that they could increase the deficit, lead to trade conflicts, and disproportionately hurt lower-income Americans. Those with less income spend a larger share of their money on goods, which would likely become more expensive under Trump's tariffs. Michael Greets, a tax scholar at Columbia Law School, who supports a consumption tax, noted, "Whether he knows it or not, it's a shift from taxing income to taxing consumption." But he disagrees with Trump's approach, saying, "If you wanted to implement a consumption tax, you wouldn't start with tariffs." Trump's anti-tax stance, often expressed in social media posts and slogans at political rallies, reflects his approach to economic issues. His advisors believe in the political appeal of tax cuts and hold the view that tariffs primarily impact foreign nations, not Americans, despite studies showing that U.S. businesses and consumers bear much of the cost. Some of Trump's advisors also believe that his previous tax cuts will not sufficiently boost an economy they think is struggling due to recent inflation. Despite cooling inflation and a strong economy, this belief has pushed Trump to consider deeper tax cuts. Some advisors have even discussed suspending payroll taxes that fund Social Security and Medicare, a move Trump attempted in 2020. Such a plan, like Trump's proposal to eliminate taxes on Social Security benefits, could worsen the already precarious financial state of these programs. Caroline Leavitt, a spokesperson for Trump, stated that his tax proposals stand in sharp contrast to Vice President Kamala Harris's plans to raise taxes on corporations and high-income individuals. If Americans want lower taxes and more money in their pockets, voting for President Trump is the only option, she said. The United States has collected income taxes since the 16th Amendment was ratified in 1913. Today, income taxes account for about half of all federal revenue, while payroll taxes contribute about 35% and corporate income taxes add around 9%. Tariffs, by comparison, make up just 2% of federal revenue. Conservative economists, including those advising Trump, have long been critical of income taxes, arguing that they discourage savings and investment. They advocate for something like a value-added tax, which would tax spending and encourage savings. Economists close to Trump, like Arthur Laffer, have supported moving toward a consumption tax and introducing a flat tax, which would apply the same rate to all income levels. Such a system would replace the current progressive tax structure, where higher incomes are taxed at higher rates. Laffer, who has advised Trump on tax policy for years, believes it's feasible to move in this direction during a second Trump term. He was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by Trump in 2019 for his contributions to conservative tax policy. A conservative policy plan known as Project 2025, which Trump has distanced himself from, also advocates for a consumption tax to replace the income tax. On Capitol Hill, lawmakers have long pushed for legislation that would end all income taxes, including payroll and capital gains taxes, and replace them with a 23% national sales tax. This legislation would also abolish the Internal Revenue Service. Budget experts are unsure of the full impact of Trump's proposals to exempt tips and overtime from taxes. However, many fear it could prompt millions of Americans to restructure their pay to maximize tax-free income, potentially costing the government hundreds of billions in revenue. Steve Moore, a conservative economist who advises Trump, said the former president does not view his tariff proposal as a consumption tax because Trump doesn't believe tariffs are passed on to American consumers. While tariffs only apply to imports and may invite retaliation, they differ from traditional consumption taxes, which affect both domestic and foreign goods. However, Moore acknowledged that past efforts to implement a consumption tax in the U.S. have faced opposition. He believes incremental steps, like those proposed by Trump, are key to moving towards such a system. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris has criticized Trump's plans, calling his proposed tariffs a national sales tax that would raise costs for Americans. Despite these criticisms, some Democrats, like former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, have in the past expressed support for a consumption tax, given its potential to raise significant government revenue. Scholars like Greets have worked on plans to ensure that a consumption tax remains progressive, protecting low-income families from bearing too much of the tax burden. However, Brendan Duke, a senior director at the Center for American Progress, pointed out that Trump has not proposed such protections. The main point of contention between conservatives and liberals regarding a consumption tax is whether it should replace the income tax or coexist with it. Trump's vision appears to be to weaken the income tax, forcing the government to rely more on tariffs and borrowing for funding. Still, some conservatives, like Casey Mulligan, a former Trump White House economist, oppose consumption taxes because of how effective they are at raising revenue. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that a 5% value-added tax could raise more than $3 trillion over 10 years. Mulligan said, "The reason I'm against it is that the consumption tax is so good at getting revenue. I'm not sure I want our Treasury to be that flush."